I'm Ivy Morgan, 33, creative director of a design studio in Austin, Texas. A month ago, I received the same familiar message from my mother. Sweetheart, there's not enough space for you at the Arrowhead Lake trip this year. Hopefully next summer will be different. I read that message 3 times, then I checked the time. 40 minutes later, my sister, Valerie, posted a photo on Instagram of the printed itinerary for this year's family vacation, getting ready for a wonderful week with the fam. I zoomed in on the photo. My eyes scanned each faint line of text, stopping at the bottom right corner of the page. Confirmed guests. 102. 102 people. And I wasn't one of them. My hand trembled. I counted all 6 of my siblings, their spouses, their children. Aunts, uncles, my mother's old classmates, my dad's colleagues, the neighbors from across the street, everyone, except me, the only child excluded from what they still called a family tradition. I texted Valerie, "Wow, big crowd this year, 102 people?" She replied almost instantly, "Yep, Mom booked the main lodge and 2 extra cabins. Everyone's so excited." I kept my tone neutral. My mom said there wasn't enough space for me. "Oh, maybe she thought you'd be busy. You're always working 24/7. I didn't respond because I knew better. They didn't need a real reason, just an excuse. It's been like this for the past 3 years. Every early summer, I'd get the same message. Not enough space. We're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family. Then, days later, I'd see the photos. Everyone smiling, boating, barbecuing by the lake. And me, the one who helped Grandpa build that first cabin, watching from a distance. I'm not the type to hold grudges, but no one gets used to being erased from their own family without feeling something crack. Even if I'm a CEO, even if I sign deals with global firms, even if I live in a penthouse I bought with clean money, to them, I'm still the different one. My father, Charles Morgan, is the founder of Morgan and Bryant Capital, a respected investment firm in Dallas. In his eyes, success is measured by numbers, charts, and dividend reports. My mother, Eliza, always stood quietly behind him, yet never hesitated to show her disappointment when I chose art over finance like my brother Nathan, or law like the twins Andrew and Alex. My family is a textbook portrait of traditional success: 3-story house, expensive SUVs, Saturday cocktails, and Sunday golf. In that frame, I don't fit. No husband, no kids, no achievement spreadsheet they understand. I used to think that if I worked harder, earned more awards, landed more high-profile clients, they'd finally acknowledge me as a real part of the family. But here I am, 3 summers later, and the only thing I've received is a copy-paste message. Same time, same excuse. But this year, seeing 102 guests clearly printed on that blurry photo flipped a switch inside me. A slow, precise awakening, like stepping out of a dream that's dragged on for 33 years. No, this wasn't because I was busy. This wasn't because they forgot. This wasn't about space. It was a choice. A deliberate one. I grew up in the western suburbs of Texas, where every house had a white picket fence and flags waving every 4th of July. From the outside, the Morgans looked like the perfect American family. A successful father, a graceful mother, well-mannered children, a big home, and Thanksgiving dinners filled with laughter. But only those inside knew the truth. There were walls painted in expectations, and I was never the color they wanted. Every summer, we'd head up to Blue Ridge, a lakeside property my grandparents, Walter and June Morgan, bought back in the 1970s. 8 acres of maple trees and a weathered oak dock. Grandpa used to say, "This place is the heart of the family." He wasn't just being sentimental. I remember every summer morning he'd brew coffee and carry his easel out to the forest edge. I was the only one who followed. Valerie buried herself in sat prep books. Nathan had his eyes glued to the Wall Street Journal by the time he was 12. Andrew and Alex spent hours battling with mini hockey sticks, but me? I sat beside Grandpa for hours, hands covered in paint, sketching the shadows of trees rippling on the lake. You don't just look, you observe, he once told me, gently placing a hand on my shoulder as I painted the old wooden boat. Not everyone sees the beauty in quiet things. He was the first to give me a real set of brushes, the only gift that year that made me cry. Grandma always baked from scratch, laying out each meal like a ritual. But I noticed early on that the way she looked at Nathan and Valerie carried pride I never saw aimed at me. To her, I was the dreamy one, the talented but impractical kid. She never said it outright, but I heard it in every sigh. My father, no sugarcoating. To him, art was a luxury for the lazy. When he saw my first semester transcript from Boston Art School, he scoffed. A degree in design sounds like an excuse not to get a real job. My mother, Eliza, was softer but just as sharp. She didn't object directly, but whenever someone asked what I did, she'd smile politely and say, "She's pursuing something creative." Every time she said it, I wished I could disappear. The favoritism wasn't in the words, it was in the looks. The seating arrangements at dinner, the names mentioned when guests were over, who got the car keys first, who got interest-free loans for their first home. I was never one of the who's. I remember a Christmas when I was 25. I just landed a branding contract with a major tech firm, nearly $90,000. I brought the design demo to the family gathering, excited to share. Nathan got applause for being nominated to the regional banking board. Valerie received tight hugs from my mom after showing her third baby's ultrasound. When it was my turn, Mom simply offered a thin smile. "As long as you're happy," smiled back, the well-practiced professional kind. But that night, I lay on the guest room couch, staring at the ceiling, wide awake. I realized I could hit every career milestone, but to them I'd always be the one who veered off the path they mapped out. Being excluded from the family retreat 3 years in a row wasn't an oversight. It was the result of an unspoken logic that had always existed. I didn't belong there. I didn't fit the Morgan mold. But what they don't know is that I've kept a handwritten letter from Grandpa, written when I was 17, the year I turned down Harvard and chose art school in Boston. "Ivy," he wrote, "don't be afraid to walk alone. The brave always begin as the different ones, but in the end, they're the ones who redefine the world." They may have forgotten me, but I never forgot him. What broke me wasn't this year's "not enough space" text. It was the photo Valerie posted on her story that afternoon. She hadn't noticed how close the camera was, but I did. The printed itinerary, placed neatly among trays of pastries and juice, had a bold title: Morgan Family Vacation 2025, The Grand Gathering. Just below it, in smaller print, confirmed guest count, 104. 104. I stared at that number, my chest tightening with every beat. I zoomed in on the image, scanning the daily group schedule. Boating team, cooking group, kids camp, even a fireside talk with guest speaker from MIT, someone I knew was Nathan's college friend. She got invited, I didn't. I stood frozen in my kitchen, a cold cup of coffee untouched on the table. My 11th floor apartment felt painfully still. Only the wind knocking against the glass broke the silence. I was used to being left out, but this year, they didn't even try to hide it. I sent a simple message to the old group chat that once included all 6 of us siblings. "Looks like a full house this year." Andrew read it. No reply. Valerie seen. Nothing. Alex responded with a laughing emoji and, "Tradition's still going strong." No one mentioned my absence. No one checked in. No sign that anything was wrong. I set my phone down. It felt like a punch to the chest. Helpless, humiliating, and the kind of familiar sadness that wraps around your shoulders like wet wool. I walked to the window, staring at the golden highway lights below, endless cars in motion. While I stood still, trapped in a loop I hadn't figured out how to escape, I called Rowan, my best friend from college. We'd survived sleepless nights building portfolios, professors tearing apart our work, and dreams that nobody else believed in. She picked up immediately. "Hello? Ivy?" I didn't speak for 3 seconds. Then I blurted, 104 people, Rowan. They invited 104 people. Even Mom's new yoga friend. And me? I'm out for the third time. Rowan paused. Then her voice dropped low. "I know you want me to say something comforting, but this isn't a mistake anymore." I slid to the floor, back against the wall, clutching the phone. I don't know what to do. I don't want to cry over them again, but I can't pretend it's okay anymore. "Then don't pretend," Rowan said calmly. "You're a creator, Ivy, so respond like one." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "They're using that vacation to reinforce control, to draw lines. So take what you do best and redraw the space, not for revenge, but to declare that you don't need someone to hand you a seat. You build the table." I was silent for a long time. Her words hit something in me, like she had just struck the match I'd been holding without lighting. A part of me wanted to blow everything up, write a tell-all on social media, expose years of exclusion, post the texts. But deep down, I knew, even if the world rallied behind me, they wouldn't change. And I was done trying to prove myself to people determined not to see. I shifted my focus, not from pain to revenge, but from reaction to intention. I looked at the painting in my living room, the first piece I ever sold, for over $10,000. Then at the corner wall, where I kept my design awards, teaching certifications, and framed photos from brand launches. If my family couldn't see that worth, I'd invite others who could, not at their table, at mine, the one I would build. It took me exactly 3 hours to turn the pain into action. After the call with Rowan, I opened my laptop, pulled the curtains to keep the screen clear, and started searching. Typed in keywords, fine-tuned the filters, removed any retreats that were too far or lacked privacy. My goal wasn't just to rent a beautiful house, it was to create a counterspace. Not a copy of the Morgan family vacation, but a version with soul. When I saw Willow Haven Retreat, I just knew. Tucked by Greystone Lake in Arkansas, Willow Haven is a set of modern villas nestled among pine trees, with 4 small lodges connected by stone walkways, all facing a private dock. Floor-to-ceiling glass, white oak interiors, an open-concept European kitchen, and a backyard big enough for outdoor workshops. Most importantly, the last week of July was still open. I emailed for a quote. 30 minutes later, a manager named Rachel replied. $7,200 for the full week, includes the entire property, full kitchen setup, and group event privileges. Expensive, but within reach. I didn't hesitate, paid the deposit that same night, pulled from my personal savings originally meant for a boutique interior design project. The project could wait. Self-worth couldn't. The next morning, I brewed coffee, opened Notion, and created a new workspace titled Creative Escape 2025. Underneath was the description, a week for creative souls to recharge, reconnect, and reclaim. No one excluded. No one needs permission to belong. I started listing names. First had to be Rowan. Then Jordan, a photographer I'd collaborated with 3 times, whose lens sliced through convention. Next was Lydia, a former client, now a high school art teacher battling burnout. Then Simon and Mia, the ex-coworker couple who once took me to Yosemite with a full synth rig to record sunset sounds. I wanted the guest list to be filled with people who never asked me to prove myself, the ones who called me inspiring, not the eccentric one trying too hard. I sent invitations via personal emails, each attached with a PDF I designed myself, in earthy brown, olive green, and minimalist serif fonts. You are invited to Creative Escape, a week of creativity, connection, and healing. In the small note section, I hand-wrote each line. Not a conference, not a summer camp, no speakers or PowerPoint decks. Just nature, art, and the space to be yourself. And at the very bottom, I paused a moment longer before typing. Pez, if you've ever felt like a stranger in your own family, job, or beloved community, this place is for you. I wasn't planning to invite anyone from my family, but when I paused at the name Cameron, my youngest sibling, 28, a speech therapist in Tulsa, I hesitated. Cameron was the only one who had messaged me last year when I wasn't at the family gathering, just one sentence. "You're not coming? I miss you." No sides, no explanations, just miss. And that was enough. I added his name to the list. His personal email read, "I'm hosting a small retreat for creatives. If you have time and need a break, I'd love for you to come." When the list hit 16 people, I stopped. Not because I ran out of people I wanted to invite, but because I wanted to keep the atmosphere intimate. A true retreat, not a media-style event. The next 3 evenings, I spent all my time planning details. Built a website on Squarespace. Created an Instagram account at Creative Escape 2025. Designed a sign-up form with questions on health, artistic interests, and food allergies. Hired a local chef named Elise, recommended by Rowan, known for cooking at yoga retreats in Sedona. Each night, as I closed my laptop, I felt something unfamiliar. I was taking control of my own story. I arrived at Willow Haven on Saturday afternoon, one day before the guests were set to arrive. My SUV was packed to the brim with bags of handmade candles, boxes of watercolor paints, sketchbooks, and 18 gift baskets I had stayed up 3 straight nights to prepare. When I stepped into the main hall, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, spilling across the pale wooden floors in a warm, honey-colored glow. The space was quiet, open, free from chatter, free from judgment. Only the sound of wind weaving through pine trees outside, and the calm beat of my heart. I spent the entire afternoon placing each gift basket in the guest rooms, a leather-bound notebook engraved with the guest's name, a handcrafted fountain pen, a few wax crayons, a jar of local honey, and a handwritten card. For Cameron, I included a small sketch of the two of us paddling a boat as kids. For Rowan, I tucked in an old photo of us asleep at a drawing desk. When I mounted the wooden sign at the front gate that read, "Welcome to Creative Escape," I wasn't just attaching a name, I was making my presence known, quietly but unmistakably. On Sunday morning, the first cars appeared along the gravel drive leading into the property. Rowan arrived first, stepping out of the car with a bright smile and slightly red eyes. "My God, Ivy, you turned this place into a whole other world." Within just 2 hours, the entire space came alive. Jordan set up an outdoor photo zone with 3 large canvases. Mia arranged her mini keyboard setup on the porch. Lydia pulled out 15 easels and placed them throughout the stone courtyard beneath the trees. Elise, the chef I'd hired, began organizing ingredients in the kitchen for the welcome dinner. Pan-seared salad, rye bread, and mint tea. That evening, we dined under a canopy of paper lanterns, with soft acoustic music in the background and the scent of young pine on the breeze. I stood up and raised my wine glass. "Thank you all for being here, not to escape anything, but to return to yourselves." The table went quiet for a beat. Then the clinking of glasses followed. In the days that followed, the schedule unfolded like a dream. Each morning began with a gentle yoga session with Mia by the lake. After breakfast, guests split into free-form groups. Those who wanted to hike followed Lydia through the woods. Those interested in early light photography went with Jordan. Those who preferred to stay and paint, sculpt, or simply read had quiet corners all to themselves. On Tuesday afternoon, an old Ford pulled up unexpectedly at the gate. A tall woman stepped out. Silver hair tied back, olive canvas coat, round sunglasses. I recognized her immediately. "Aunt Agnes?" I stammered. "Hello, Ivy," she smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Heard this place was better than that noisy family gathering." Aunt Agnes was my grandmother's sister, a journalist who'd traveled across Africa in the 80s, the one who gave me my first drawing pen from Paris. She was always seen as the eccentric in the Morgan clan. I had admired her for as long as I could remember, but it had been almost 8 years since we last met. How did you know I was here? Valerie posted a picture of the old vacation invite. I noticed your name wasn't on it. Then I saw your post, that sunset in the background. I recognized it right away. That evening, after everyone had gone to their rooms, she and I sat on the wooden bench outside the porch. She held a mug of hot cocoa, looked at me, head tilted. Your grandparents, she said softly. If they were alive, they'd throw their arms around you and say, "There she is. That's our girl." I turned away, trying to hold back tears. I've always felt like a system glitch. No, Ivy. She placed her hand over mine. You're the upgrade. The system was just outdated. I smiled gently, touching the silver ring she wore, the same design I'd once seen on Grandma's finger in a wedding photo. You created something truly soulful, Ivy. Here, you didn't ask for a seat, you built the table, and those who belong will find their way to it. I looked out over the lake, where moonlight shimmered across the surface like a stroke of silver ink. I never expected that the retreat I organized to fill a void would become the place where I found the fullest part of myself. Thursday afternoon, while the group was setting up for the drawing from memory workshop in the backyard, my phone rang. Caller ID? Mom, Eliza Morgan. I stared at the screen. My throat went dry, not from surprise, but because I knew. The news had finally reached them. I let the first call go to voicemail. Then the second call came in, this time from Dad, Charles Morgan. I silenced it, slipped the phone into my pocket, and stepped outside. 15 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up right beside the pine trees. The door opened and my mother stepped out first, white blouse, sunglasses covering half her face. My father followed, still tall, in a light gray suit and with the measured stride of a longtime CEO, used to being in control. I met them on the front porch, stopping them right at the steps. I didn't want them entering this space, a space where every person had arrived by choice, not obligation. My mom removed her sunglasses, her voice sharp as always. Ivy, what is this about? Valerie just called and said you're organizing some kind of event. I kept my voice steady. It's called a retreat. I invited friends, colleagues, and people I value. We're having a week of creativity and rest. Kind of like what the family vacation used to be before it turned into a guest list full of business contacts. My dad crossed his arms, his gaze hardening. And you scheduled it the exact same week as the family vacation? What a coincidence. I took a deep breath and lifted my chin. It's not a coincidence, and it's not retaliation either. I planned this retreat because for the past 3 years, you both have texted me saying there wasn't room for me. Yet somehow there was room for over 100 people, including Nathan's friend's dog. Except me. My mother's face went pale. My father looked at me like it was the first time he was actually listening. I continued, for the first time without hesitation. I didn't do this to go against anyone, but I'm done waiting around for a pity invitation. I created my own space. I invited those willing to be present. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe the problem isn't me. A voice spoke behind me. She's not wrong. I turned. Cameron had stepped out from the house, tea in hand, standing tall and unflinching. You're here too? My mom asked, clearly stunned. And I'm proud to be, Cameron said, locking eyes with her. This is the first time I've felt a vacation actually meant something. No pressure, no comparisons, no pretending. My father looked around the grounds, easels set up under the trees, a small speaker playing soft music, a group sculpting clay on the porch. Everything calm, peaceful. Who paid for all this? He asked. I did, I replied. With what money? From the job you always called silly art stuff. The air thickened, but instead of anger, my father exhaled. For the first time, his eyes softened. Ivy, I'm sorry. I blinked. My mother turned to him, confused. He went on, slowly, every word careful. I used to believe there was only one right path, that anyone who stepped off it would fail. But what you've created, he looked around again, is something I never imagined. You've made yourself a guide, without needing anyone's permission. I stood still, my throat tightened. My mother looked down, she said nothing. I wasn't expecting remorse, but in that moment, when he admitted he'd been wrong, it was the first time I saw him look at me as an equal. "If you're here tonight as guests," I said calmly, "you're welcome. But if you came to fix or command, I'll have to say no." My father nodded. "We're here to listen." Cameron smiled at me. I gave a slight nod, then turned back inside. That night, they stayed for dinner. No speeches, no judgment, just a simple meal among people who knew how to create a kind space. For the first time in years, I saw a look in my father's eyes that wasn't expectation, but wonder, and maybe just a hint of pride. The last morning at Willow Haven, soft sunlight pierced through the morning mist, casting a silvery glow across the lake. I stood alone on the wooden dock, coffee cup in hand, watching the still water ripple gently, as if it were breathing with me. The retreat ended quietly and peacefully. No applause, no dramatic goodbyes, just genuine hugs, warm glances, and promises to meet again. It wasn't an event. It was a turning point. In just 1 week, strangers became companions. Professional connections became personal bonds. Jordan received collaboration offers from 2 guests for a photo exhibition project in Denver. Lydia, who had been burned out from teaching, said to me on the final night, "Ivy, because of you, I remembered why I started." Rowan is now planning a mini version of the retreat in New Mexico. Elise, the chef, was offered to host online cooking classes by a group of retreat guests, and she asked me to design her full brand. I didn't just organize a vacation, I created a space with momentum. And I knew this was only the beginning. As for my family, change came from places I least expected. 3 days after I returned to Austin, I received a text from Cameron. "Hey, Mom just called me. She said she wants to have lunch with you, just the 2 of you." She didn't say more, but her tone was different. I didn't reply right away, not out of anger, but because I needed a breath. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had the right to choose the moment to speak, not just be the passive one. Andrew, the one who used to mock my design career, suddenly sent an email. Short, but direct. "Ivy, I've read what people wrote about your retreat. Really impressed. I want to learn how to run team building like that. If you're open, maybe we can collaborate." I took a day to reply, but I did, with professionalism, not bitterness. "I am happy to share if you're coming as a learner, not a teacher." A few weeks later, Valerie texted too. "Ivy, maybe we got too used to you always managing on your own and forgot you also deserve to be invited. If the hurt is real, then I'm sorry." It wasn't a full apology, but at least it existed, and that, to me, was a signal. I started therapy after years of putting it off. During the first session, I told Dr. Lin that I had always believed I didn't have the right to hurt, that I was independent, strong, fine. But it turned out that by always appearing fine, I had become invisible. Lin said something I'll never forget. "People who get overlooked aren't weak. They just make their pain too quiet." I had been quiet for too long. I decided I'll host Creative Escape once a year. No overexpansion, no commercialization, just keeping the original spirit, quality, intimacy, connection. And next time, I want more young creatives who feel lost, so they won't have to wait 30 years to find their voice. And then something unexpected happened. One Friday afternoon, I got a call from Aunt Agnes. "Ivy, I just met with the estate lawyer for your grandparents, and I want you to know, starting next summer, you'll have full rights to use the original family Lakehouse for 1 week each year during the exact week the family reunion used to happen. The will doesn't restrict it, and I'm the last surviving heir with authority to decide the schedule." I froze. "I don't think Mom and Dad will agree." They don't have the power to deny it, and if they don't show up, even better. You'll use that space exactly as your grandparents intended, for connection, not for show. Her voice was firm, uncompromising. I gripped the phone, speechless. That night, I pulled out the handwritten letter from Grandpa Walter, the one I'd kept in a drawer for over a decade. The brown ink had faded, but the last line was still clear. You may not be invited to their table, but one day you will be the one setting it. And I think that day has come. I sat by the window in my Austin apartment, city lights reflecting faintly on the glass. On the table, the small map I used to plan next year's retreat had already begun to show red markings, arrival dates, departure dates, names of people I planned to invite. But this time, they weren't names I added to prove anything. This time, I invited them because I wanted them there, because they would enrich the space I was creating. I no longer felt the need to get back at my family or reclaim a seat I was denied. Instead, I understood something more important. Not everyone will recognize your worth, and that doesn't mean you don't have any. In their own way, my family is changing, slowly, awkwardly at times, but it's real. My mom now texts every weekend, "Are you getting any rest this week? Got time for lunch?" I'm not always ready, but I don't shut the door anymore. We're relearning how to approach each other, not through roles or expectations, but through genuine curiosity. My dad started following my social media page. One time, after I posted a photo of the retreat space, he sent a single message. "Beautiful photo. I didn't know you were this talented." I didn't reply immediately, but I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder labeled Things to Remember. Cameron still drops by the studio on weekend afternoons. He doesn't ask much, just brings peach tea, reads a book, occasionally tweaks some typography for me, and laughs. Who would have thought you'd be the one teaching me design? Moments like that, I don't need any more proof that I'm on the right path. I'm no longer seeking their approval. I have my own light now. I've been spending more time in therapy. In a late-month session, Dr. Lin asked me, "If no one else in your family ever changes, can you live with that, Ivy?" I didn't hesitate. Yes, because I don't need them to change in order for me to live fully. I used to do everything to be invited to their table. Shrink myself, become the successful but not too flashy daughter, wait for a spot that should have been mine from the beginning. But then I realized not every table is worth sitting at, and not everyone related to you is truly family. Family to me now is the group of people willing to listen, willing to make amends, and willing to build together, even with the smallest bricks. I haven't forgiven everything, and I don't have to, but I've put down the burden of waiting, and when I stopped begging to be accepted, I finally started to live. I remember what Grandpa wrote in his letter when I was 17. Don't live your life just to fit someone else's mold. Let them adjust if they want to walk alongside you. I spent too long trying to fit, and now, as I choose my own space, the right people are starting to find their way to me. Next year's retreat will be held at the very same lakeside cabin, once overtaken by family events under the guise of unity. Now, thanks to Aunt Agnes's decision, it's been returned to its original purpose: connection and healing. I won't be sending invitations to the whole extended family, but those who truly want to come will find the way. On the final night of this year's retreat, I wrote this in my journal. I used to think being excluded was the end, but it turned out it was the doorway to where I was meant to be all along. If anyone reading this has ever felt forgotten, sidelined, I just want to say you are not alone, and you don't need anyone's validation to be whole. We can build new tables with new rules, tables that don't need prestige, just room for sincerity. And sometimes in that open space, you will be the one lighting the way for an entire generation to step in. Ivy's story is a powerful reminder that exclusion does not define your worth. It's an opportunity to redefine yourself. When she stopped waiting for acceptance, she created a space that honored personal value, brought kindred spirits together, and healed old wounds through creative action. In real life, Sometimes what we truly need isn't a seat at someone else's table, but the courage to build our own, where we and those who belong can truly be seen. What do you think about Ivy's choice? Would you have the courage to do the same if your own family shut you out? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more deeply moving and meaningful stories.